My name is Sarah Klein, and I work for the Center for Ethical Leadership. I am their program coordinator, and I work on all the Lead Orange programming. So that is the leadership development series, a few different scholarship programs, just really opening up any opportunity for leadership on campus to anyone who wants to be a part of it. We also do Lead Orange, which is a way that we highlight really awesome leaders on campus through social media. Pretty much if you see that hashtag Lead Orange tag, it is our programs at the Center for Ethical Leadership. We are housed in the Student Union, Office 250, so stop by anytime that you need anything leadership related, and we're here to help you with that. Also, I want to give you guys a disclaimer that this is the first time we are doing the leadership development series virtually. So if we have some slip-ups or mistakes or things get kind of caught up along the way, please forgive us and just kind of go along with it. Hopefully everything goes smoothly, but we never know in this virtual age anymore. So thank you all so much for being here. I am going to start sharing my screen. Okay. Can someone give me a thumbs up that they see a PowerPoint slide? Awesome, thank you. Okay, we are going to start then. Okay, so we today are going to talk about the power of narrative in leadership, which is honestly just a fancy way to say how to tell your leadership story, how to build that story, how to get kind of that ammunition and the experience you need to have a story in leadership, and then eventually be able to tell it. So I just want to give you guys a little heads up of what the benefits of coming to this leadership development series are, besides the fact that you get to listen to some awesome leadership tips. If you attend at least 4 of these seminars, you will receive an invitation to the Lead Orange Awards, which happen in the spring, and those are going to be TBD, dependent upon the COVID situation and if we're going to have it virtually or in person. But if you come to 4 of those seminars, you will get an invitation to that, however we have it, as well as a certificate in leadership. And then if you attend at least 5, you get all of those goodies, but you also get a medal in leadership that you can wear at graduation. And we keep track of all of your attendance. My graduate assistant, Taylor North, is on the call right now, and she's waving. She's tracking all of the attendance. So if you do not have your full screen name listed, I've enabled it so that you can change your name. So for example, if it just says like Michael's iPhone or something, we're not going to know who you are. But if you will change your screen name to your full first and last name, so we can make sure we get that attendance for you. If you can't figure that out, just type in the chat box, "Hey Taylor, here's my full name." All right. Are there any questions on that before we get started? You are more than welcome to unmute yourself, or you can type in the chat box and Taylor will answer them to the best of her ability. All right, cool. Okay, so we're going to start off first of all with why stories. Why are stories even important in talking about leadership? So honestly, just in humankind, stories are super powerful. They've been around since the beginning of time. If you think about it, humans have gathered in caves or huddled around campfires. We share stories at the dinner table. It's really just the way that we are able to relate to other human beings and express our experience with the world around us. Also, we tell stories, like I said, to make sense of our experiences and ourselves. Stories absolutely connect us. And so through storytelling, a lot of the time we create values, we develop bonds with each other, and we create a group identity, kind of like a group think, group values. Stories also help shape the culture that we want to create as a leader. So an individual's story can motivate you to want to join them, to engage with them, even invest in their movements or purchase from their ideas or their brands. If you think about any super successful person, if you think about Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, Oprah Winfrey, they all have stories to tell. Martin Luther King. When you think about them, you think about their stories, and their stories are what has made you rally behind them or get invested in what they have to say, or even, like I said, as simple as maybe purchasing a t-shirt from them. Okay, so step one in telling your leadership story might surprise some of you, but it's actually learning to listen. So step one, we're going to talk about how you can use listening as a tool to build your story. And in order to be a good storyteller, you also have to be a good listener. So we're going to talk a little bit about something called seek first to understand, then be understood. If you come around the Center for Ethical Leadership, this is kind of one of our catchphrases. So welcome to one of our catchphrases, but seek first to understand, then be understood. And we're going to kind of break that down. And we're going to do so first by watching a video. So bear with me because I'm going to have to figure out how to pull this up. If there's issues, let me know. We obviously want you to be able to actually hear the video. Is anyone seeing a video pull up, or are you just still seeing my PowerPoint?
Just the PowerPoint.
Just the PowerPoint. Okay, that helps me. I'm going to stop sharing really quick. Okay, stop share. And then we're going to share the screen again. Click the video. Okay, you guys should see now it almost looks like a hiking video-esque. Okay, cool. I see some head nods. Okay, I'm going to turn my volume all the way up and hopefully we can hear this video. But remember, keep that in mind, the seek first to understand, then be understood while you watch this video.
It's just, there's all this pressure, you know? And sometimes it feels like it's right up on.
Before I continue, can you hear the video?
Yes.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you. All right.
It's just, there's all this pressure, you know? And sometimes it feels like it's right up on me. And I can just feel it, like literally feel it in my head. And it's relentless. And I don't know if it's going to stop. I mean, that's the thing that scares me the most, is that I don't know if it's ever going to stop.
Yeah. Well, you do have a nail in your head.
Don't know why the video stopped. It's okay. Virtual learning is fun.
It's not about the nail.
Are you sure? Because, I mean, I'll bet if we got that out of there.
Stop trying to fix it.
No, I'm not trying to fix it. I'm just pointing out that maybe the nail is causing.
You always do this. You always try to fix things when what I really need is for you to just listen.
See, I don't think that is what you need. I think what you need is to get the nail
See, you're
out.
not even listening now.
Okay, fine. I will listen. Fine.
It's just, sometimes it's like there's this achy, I don't know what it is. And I'm not sleeping very well at all. And all my sweaters are snagged. I mean, all of them.
That sounds really hard.
It is. Thank you. Ow!
Oh, come on. If you would just...
Don't.
All right. So if you guys wouldn't mind, I would love to hear your feedback on that video. and how that can relate to seek first to understand, then be understood. We'll obviously break it down further, but if you'll unmute and just tell me what you thought about that.
To me, it shows like the difference in like how if you give a guy a problem, in my experience, he just wants to dive in and solve it. But a lot of times as girls, we just like to talk about it before we try to fix it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's maybe kind of just even human nature, and not so much even about genders, but there's days that we don't want someone to fix our problems. We just want to talk about our problems and what's bothering us. And sometimes we need someone to listen rather than to just fix it, even when it's as obvious as a nail in your head. Thank you so much. Anyone else?
Yeah, I was gonna say, as leaders, we want to be problem solvers. That's a value that you should want to have. But this is where listening comes into play. It's because sometimes that's more important, and having empathy when it comes to being able to listen, sometimes is more valuable than problem solving.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great insight. Anyone else?
I think I want to add into that is, as leaders, specifically in our areas, we're kind of seen as the people who have all the answers. And sometimes when we have this mindset of going in to simply just listen, we're able to analyze and see if they're really looking for an answer, or if they're just looking for someone to hear them out because they haven't been able to have that in another situation. So I think just being able to listen, or coming in with a mindset to just listen, will help us understand, like, are they really looking for an answer that we really don't have? Or are they just simply trying to have someone to listen to?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Sometimes people need that safe space, and us as leaders are going to be the ones to provide that safe space. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to start sharing my screen again so we can hop back into the presentation. Okay. Okay, so before I read this, I just want to say that it's totally okay to want to be understood. I think that's very much a human desire that we have, for people to relate to us and people to understand us and what we're going through. But as leaders, we want to seek first to understand, because if you're like most people, you probably seek to be understood first. You want to get your point across, and in doing so, you may ignore other people completely, pretend you're listening, or selectively hear only certain parts of the conversation, or attentively focus on only the words being said, but you miss the meaning entirely. I know that I am absolutely guilty of doing this. I know that sometimes I just really want to share my story, or I want to get my point across so much that I kind of just listen so that I can reply, instead of listening to really actually be able to soak in what people are saying. Does this sound familiar to any of you? You can just give me like a little hand raise or a head nod. I think we're all guilty of it. And so let's talk about why this happens. If we kind of understand that this maybe isn't the best way to communicate and the best way to share stories and to lead, why do we do it? So what this is called understanding autobiographically. And autobiographies are absolutely a type of storytelling, right? The thing about this, though, is as leaders, we don't want to start with understanding autobiographically. We don't want to start by immediately telling our stories. We want to start with listening, because remember, to be a good storyteller, you also have to be a good listener. So like we said, a lot of people just don't listen with the intent to understand. They listen with the intent to reply. And that's simply why we do it. A lot of the time in our very fast-paced world, we feel like we have to get in our time, right? We have to get in what we need to say. We need to have people understand us so that we can build relationships. It's just, honestly, like I said before, it's a little bit of human nature. And eventually we're going to get to that autobiography. We are going to be able to tell our story, but it's not what we want to start with. It's what we want to end with. Because when we listen to other people's stories, we're going to really start to gather what we find fascinating when someone tells a story. Is it the way that they use their body language? Is it the way that their voice inflection goes up and down? Do we really like their past experiences? Can we really relate to maybe their childhoods or past issues they've had? Do they have the same passions we do? When we start to listen to the people around us, we build experiences and we build, like Andrew was saying, a little bit of that empathy for others. When we truly listen, it allows us to be a sponge, and we can actually use it as our power to build our own stories. So typically, when we are listening to someone telling a story, we're doing one of these four things. We're evaluating, so we'll judge and then either agree or disagree. But sometimes we don't need to agree or disagree. Sometimes we just need to be there and soak up the knowledge. Sometimes we might probe and we ask questions from our own perspective. Asking questions is such a helpful tool in building your story. But when you ask questions from a very non-biased, neutral field, not when you're asking it from your already preconceived notions or preconceived opinions. You may even want to challenge and say, this is what I've known my whole life, or this is where my opinion is. Can you explain to me why you think differently? We also may do advising, where you give counsel, advice, or solutions to problems based on your own experiences. I think one of the most frustrating things we do as people is when someone is telling us a story or they're venting to us and we say, oh, I totally understand this one time, and we go off on a tangent about ourselves. I know I'm guilty of it. We really just try to fix the problem. And as leaders, as Miguel said, we really do try to be the people that have all the answers, because that's what people expect from us. But sometimes it can be more harmful when we give advice based off of our own experiences and not listen and kind of soak up what the other person is facing, because we're all so different. Even if we have a similar issue, we may be experiencing it and feeling it different. And then the last way that we typically listen is we interpret by analyzing others' intentions and behaviors based on our own motives. If you're familiar with different personality styles at all, whether it's colors or Enneagram or whatever it may be, you know that other people are driven by different motives than you are, based on different personality styles. Some people may be really driven by logic. Some people may be really driven by other people. So when you analyze someone else's behaviors based on your own intentions, you're honestly just kind of setting yourself up to not be able to understand why someone did something in the path of their story, why their story played out this way. Maybe you disagree with some of the actions they took, but you're looking at that from your own lens of your own motives. Okay, so if we have to be good listeners to be good storytellers, how do we make that change? Step 2, you're going to use empathy and experiences as a tool to build your story. So that first step was listening. And through that listening, you're going to start kind of building almost a book of other people's experiences that are going to start to become your own. Remember, we use stories as kind of this common language to build a bond and to have that group think, those group values. And so other people's experiences and the way that you interact with others starts to really unfold your own story. So the best example I can think of about this is I actually am originally from Arizona. I am not from anywhere near Stillwater, Oklahoma, and I moved here to go to college. And I honestly had quite the shock from being kind of from, more the Southwest, West Coast, and then coming to a little bit more of, Southern thinking, Midwestern, whatever Oklahoma is considered. And I really started to get to meet people who were nothing like me. And I think that is something that helped me grow the absolute most. And so I was able to meet people who weren't like me, listen to people who maybe had different religions or political opinions than what I grew up with, who had different childhood experiences than what I was so used to in my small little town in Arizona. And it really made me start to have empathy for others that were different than me, just by listening to what they'd been through, what they'd gone through, asking questions, listening. Sorry, sometimes the screen does not want to change. So how do we be empathetic with our listening to build these experiences? You want to have a willingness to let the other person dominate the conversation. I will be the first to admit that this is really hard for me. I am chatty. I love to talk. I think we all like to talk about ourselves in some way. And I really have to stop myself sometimes from bulldozing people and bulldozing and taking over the conversation. And the way that I've been able to build empathy is truly by just letting other people talk and telling myself to not say anything, to just button up and really just let them dominate. Especially when you're talking to someone who's shy, if you kind of just give them the floor and you let silence happen, they'll tend to fill those gaps because they'll actually feel like you're making space for them to talk, where maybe in other instances, they've never been given that space. So you as a leader are there to open up that space. We don't open up space by interrupting. So really just try to let them speak and make sure that they are fully finished with telling their story before you start to ask questions. Or you start to give your own experiences and start that exchange. Also, don't change the subject or move in another direction. Someone may be coming to you as a leader to really fully take a deep dive and indulge in a certain topic, a certain issue they might be having. And when you change the subject on them, sometimes they can not feel listened to or feel like they were ignored or kind of pushed to the side. The best thing to do with empathetic listening is honestly, like it says here, be a mirror. With effective communication, it's great to give eye contact and give, those subtle head nods, or even say things like, yes, oh, wow, I'm listening, those little comments here and there. Just very much reflect the emotion that they're giving you when they're telling their story. And through this listening and being a mirror, I promise you're going to be a sponge. You are going to soak up so many experiences and just so much empathy and caring for other people that you'll be able to turn that into, which is going to be one of the next steps of actually finally being able to tell your story. So when you are an empathetic listener, you're going to boost the speaker's confidence. You're going to gain the speaker's cooperation. And as leaders, we really need that cooperation, right? We need people to invest in our ideas and our brands, because honestly, what are you as a leader if you don't have followers, if you don't have people behind you to rally and make sure that your ideas become reality, right? It reduces stress and tension. Who wants to have a very tense conversation? Not me. I don't like conflict, and I would rather not have a stressful conversation. It absolutely builds teamwork. Again, just creating that bond with these stories. It gains people's trust around you, that they're going to trust that your ideas are going to see them through and you're going to be a very safe and protected space for them. And then honestly, what we've kind of been saying this whole time is by listening, you are gaining more knowledge, you're gaining better knowledge on things that you may not be an expert in, but just by listening to someone and having empathy for them and empathy for people who are different than you are really just, I see it as like picking apples, and you are picking all these stories to put in your story basket, and you've just soaked up so much from other people. You're going to be able to do what comes in step 3. And before we go to step 3, for those that are listening to this on a recording in the future, I have to give you a code word. And this code word is just to kind of track attendance, again, for that certificate and the medal, for those that aren't watching it live. So to all you future people, the code word is Hufflepuff. I'll say it again, the code word is Hufflepuff. Okay, moving on to step 3, finally getting to tell your story. For those people that like to talk and like to talk about themselves, I fall in that category. So step 3 would always be the most exciting for me. We did have to take some steps to get there. If you don't have experiences and you haven't invested in other people, you haven't listened to other people's stories, what are you going to be able to tell? I mean, honestly, I think we can relate to this in quarantine when we all stayed cooped up in our houses and didn't really have experiences. I don't know if any of us came out with many stories, March through about August, right? So if you don't have experiences, you don't get to communicate with other people, you don't have, that basket, like I said, to be able to pick from to tell your own story. So I'm going to go ahead and give you guys some tips on how to tell your story. So the first thing that you want to do is you want to honor your past. Is there something in your childhood, or is there something in a past job that really turned you into who you are? Is there an experience that you had? Is there maybe even a trauma that you had that makes you want to help others, or makes you want to get into the field that you got into, even what you picked as your major, what extracurricular activities you decided to be in? A lot of the time, our past kind of does write some of our story for us. So really reflect and honor your past. And even if your past has maybe been hard or not ideal of what you would love it to be, you can use that as fuel to build your story by honoring what you've been through and how you can push forward. You also want to identify your turning points. So I'll tell a story about myself here. A turning point for me was actually when I was a graduate assistant. My undergrad is in health promotion and my master's is in public health. And when I was a graduate student, I had the absolute pleasure of teaching total wellness, which is just like an entry-level health class here on campus. And that was the turning point in my story of where I realized that the college student population is where I want to invest my time. After I graduated with my master's, I went and I worked in the health field for a while. And even though I adored it and I loved it, it wasn't the population that I knew I needed to be serving. And so now I luckily am back here and I am serving the college student population. So that is very much the turning point of my story. When people look at my background and they see a very clinical and health focused background, and all of a sudden I'm working at OSU teaching you about leadership, that's my turning point of my story. The next thing is writing it down. If you are gathering all these stories, you're listening, you are having that empathetic listening, you are really just meeting people from all different cultures, religions, people different from you, gathering their experiences. As much as we like to think that we're going to remember it all up here, I promise you we're not. Journal things that are really impactful to you. Write things down, keep notes in any way of just kind of what you've gone through in your experiences and how that's starting to shape you. Because then when you need to maybe fill out a scholarship, apply to a job, just a multitude of different things, they almost always are going to ask you, tell us about a time you were a leader, or tell us about your leadership style. And instead of having to just sit there and just complete, just feeling like nothing is coming to you, you can go back to this journal and you can see, oh, this is where I'm honoring my past. This is where I absolutely know my turning point is when I had this conversation with this one person in my Comp 1 class, whatever it may be. You're going to have that basket of stories to be able to help you kind of start identifying your own. Also, then you're going to want to decide your communication style. So my communication style is very much, I like to lead with humor. If you haven't noticed by now, I talk a lot with my hands. I like to use videos and I like to use graphics. And I really like to have a PowerPoint in front of me. Other people, that might not be for them. For example, my supervisor, he can give a whole presentation without having a PowerPoint or a single note. He's got it all up here. He very much is able to use that as his communication style, even though it's so different from what I do, right? So really kind of just decide how you are going to speak to people to get them to hear you out, to get them to listen to you and kind of rally behind you as a leader. You also are going to want to share your story in a safe place. A safe place is even the Center for Ethical Leadership. I work at the Center for Ethical Leadership. Andrew does, Miguel does. Honestly, we all would be more than willing to hear your story that you wrote for a scholarship or you wrote for a job application, and really just kind of reflect on it with you, and see where we can improve, see what are some really great points that we need to absolutely keep. We're more than willing to do that kind of thing for you. It's our job. So and then also you want to honor feedback, even if you just talk to your roommate or you run this by a parent, a grandparent, a friend, and they give you feedback on certain parts of your story that they think you should adapt or update. Be willing to take that feedback because they're only going to make your story better, right? So after you've been able to do all of that, you can finally start telling your story. And I hope that this hasn't come across as it's like a straight linear path and you can never tell your story until it's perfect, because honestly, we're telling and gathering our stories as we go. They kind of, blend together seamlessly in this process. So if you're doing it in a more formal way, again, like I said, scholarship, job application, you'll want to maybe follow this a little bit more to the T. But in real life, we do things out of order sometimes. We do things simultaneously. So if you're always just keeping in mind, listening, being open to others, honoring others' experiences, it's going to give you everything you need to be able to tell your story. So now we're going to go ahead and let Andrew talk. He has some real life, very awesome experience about telling his story. He has owned a nonprofit company and he's really been able to be successful with it in telling his story. So thank you so much, Andrew.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll say what's really cool about seeing this presentation is we get to see this play out in our office. There's been a ton of times where I've been in Sarah's office and I have things to share, and she listens with Miguel and Taylor. I also saw Kaylin Strunk on the call, and Kaylin is one of our PLC members. His story was powerful to me, and for me, I'm in charge of the recruitment and communications for the President's Leadership Council, and hearing his story um, inspired me, and now he's a member of the PLC. And so that's just a couple of just real life experiences that I've had just over the last year. I've been in this role for a year. But for me, as far as my story, I just want to encourage you guys to understand the how powerful it is to hone in your story as it relates to your personal and professional brands. Um, every step that I've taken in my professional journey, I've had the opportunity to share my story, and not even just the opportunity, but it was sometimes something that was required for me in my interviews and things like that. And so just be able to figure out what your communication style is, honor your past, things like that. My past, for me, um, I ended up breaking my neck when I played football here at Oklahoma State. And if I didn't listen to others that came to me and shared some of their experiences and was able to inspire me, then I wouldn't have been able to develop my story. So those that were there for me would share things that got them through situations, got them through trials and tribulations, and then that allowed me to say, okay, well, now I can see how my story can affect other people and can inspire other people. And for everything that I've done, whether it was being an entrepreneur and even getting this job, Josh Taylor is a huge inspiration for me. He knew my story. I was able to share a little bit more about it, and that landed me at my position right now. And so just be mindful of how impactful your story can be with first listening and then seeing how that is going to inspire you to develop your own story. And then it'll be beneficial for you as when you have to create a personal brand and your professional brand. These things are necessary as you go throughout life, and then having a brand and a story to tell. Thanks, Sarah.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. Absolutely, 100% agree with everything you said. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And what really kind of, sparked my mind as you were talking is that people follow leaders that they can relate to, right? And so, when you are able to relate to someone's story, you're able to relate to that brand, you kind of attach to it. You even take it on as your own. And so I think that's why it's so important that we meet people different from us and we just really indulge ourselves in experiences and get this empathy from listening to others, because it will make us really relatable. No one really enjoys talking to someone that they can't relate to any of the conversation, right? And so I think being relatable, being easy to talk to, a good listener, all of those things build our story and make us great leaders. All right. So I really appreciate you all listening to us and staying on as we dealt with some technical difficulties. Again, like I said, the joys of a virtual world. I would love to hear from you all, though. If you have any questions, comments, this is absolutely a safe place. We want to create space for you here. So if you feel more comfortable typing in the chat box, we can do that. We can also just unmute and have a conversation. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and My chat box currently says 29. So let me look at that. I think we're good. Yeah, Taylor says we're good. Awesome. Someone asked, will the PowerPoint be available? Yes, so it will be available on the Center for Ethical Leadership's website. Honestly, probably just give us about a week to work out any of the kinks with that. But yes, it will be available on the Center for Ethical Leadership website. And honestly, the easiest way to get there, I can also send out the link to our website, but it's just to Google OK State Center for Ethical Leadership and it'll come right up.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
So we've been talking about listening and developing leadership. So I know leadership might probably come in rank, and at times we might find ourselves listening to people that would probably put in a position of maybe higher leadership authority or people that we respect. So there are times that these people might be facing some problem, probably your boss in a place of work, and they want to probably relate with you, maybe to discuss what's bothering them. So I actually find myself in such a situation, I think some weeks back. So I had someone which I really respect. I mean, I noticed it wasn't feeling good. And he ended up relating what was like bothering him. And this is like something that I can't really help. So I listened, but then I couldn't like solve the problem. It's probably beyond what I could prefer solution to. So how do we manage such a situation? Like somebody that is like maybe tending to develop a leadership skill, and in a way we still want to make some impact, and this person that is relating such a situation to you is way above you in terms of leadership, in terms of ranking in a place of work and the like. So how do we come in such a situation?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it was breaking up a little bit, so I just want to make sure I got your question. You were saying, sometimes when we're talking to even other leaders, we are able to listen to their issues or their stories, and we have that down, but we aren't able sometimes to be able to give the proper response because we can't solve the issue and how to handle that. Is that kind of what the question was? I just want to make sure.
Right.
Okay, great, cool. I was able to pick it up between the breaking up of my computer. Yeah, so that's honestly a question that I would like solved as well, because I am a huge people person. And I truly take it upon myself if I can't help someone. I feel like I failed, or I feel like I haven't done what I'm supposed to do as a leader if I can't give the ultimate solution. But what I have found that at least makes people feel, again, like they have a space, they have a protected comfort in you, is I'll even straight out say, I'm so sorry for what you're going through, or that's a bummer. Like that really is not fun, and I wish I had a solution for you. And I'll just be super honest and say I don't really know what the true solution is, but and this is when you can say things like, but from my experiences, even though they may be different from yours, have you tried this, this, this? And then kind of just try to work through the conversation from there. Maybe they'll like some of those ideas and they'll go try them. Maybe they won't. And you kind of have to keep dissecting, getting to the root of what the issue is. But it's okay as a leader to say, I don't actually know the answer, but I'm going to be here with you every step of the way until we figure it out.
Sarah, I'll also jump in. What I would say is, as a leader, you're not going to have all the answers every time you have a conversation. But If you feel like you're a leader and you desire to be a leader, this is when you can tap into other resources. I'll just give Josh a quick shout out. Every time I've spoken with him, regardless of what I was going through, what happened, if he didn't have the answer, he sent me in the direction of someone who might have that answer for me. And so as leaders, this is a weight to carry, of course. And like Sarah was saying, we won't have all the answers, but it can be our responsibility to direct people in the direction of where they can get the necessary resources for whatever they're going through. And so that's just one thing that it requires a little bit more work, but that's what we are, and that's what we do as leaders, is to put that burden on ourselves at times and make sure that we're able to direct people in the right direction of where they can get the resources that they need.
Yes, that's such good advice. I can't tell you how many times I've had to say, I don't know, but I know someone who does. And we as leaders have to work together to find solutions and find answers for the people that we're serving, because it is not possible for us to always have the answers. So, for example, for any of my Devon scholars who are on here, shout out to y'all. But the Devon scholars are mostly a group of engineers, people in finance, all majors that go over my head. And so I'm constantly contracting out in our meetings engineers, accountants, data management specialists to come talk to them, because I don't have the answers, but I know how to send someone a Zoom link to get on the call so that they have the answers for my students. Great question. Thank you.
I have a small question.
Yeah.
I wrote down in my notes, how do we listen to people with different communication styles than our own?
Oh, great question. Yeah. So if anyone wants to jump in on this as well, feel free. Again, I don't always have all the answers, but how we can listen to people with different communication styles of our own. I think this is also very similar to people, if you guys are familiar with love languages, the way different people express love, whether that's through words or giving gifts or, having acts of service. I think what we have to do is we just kind of have to be aware of the situation. We have to kind of analyze the way that someone is talking, if they're really rowdy or if they're really shy. And as leaders, we kind of have to be a little bit of chameleons and adapt ourselves to the way other people communicate. That doesn't mean that you have to fully take away your personality. You can still be the most genuine form of yourself, but if you're talking to someone who is pretty intimidated by a loud environment, you might want to take them, for a quiet lunch to talk to them. Or if you are working with someone who learns best from an experience, you might take them to experience that firsthand. I don't know if I've answered your question fully, but I would say just as leaders, we can keep our true selves while also being chameleons and kind of just adapting to the way people need us to be there for them.
Okay, thank you.
I want to add to.
I appreciate the insight. Oh, sorry.
Of course. Oh yeah, and someone else, if you have something to add, please go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to what you said. I think most of the times we need to be very careful not to be judgmental.
Yes.
Because we always have different kind of backgrounds and different kind of experiences. So your experience most of the time you're not feeding into whatever the other person is trying to explain to you. But because you have a kind of a biased mind towards a particular person or culture or tradition or ideas, it's not going to really help whoever is trying to talk to you to ask for a solution. So when you move away or you derobe yourself from the cloak of being judgmental, you are likely to stand a better chance to help whoever is trying to get a solution from you.
Yes, so true. I think,
Absolutely.
oh, go ahead.
I was just saying, absolutely. That was great.
Yeah, it goes back to what we talked about not listening to people through your own experiences. So absolutely, we have to be aware of other cultures and other way that people communicate that might be different from our own. And so, like you said, when you take down that veil of judgment and you're just kind of open and ready to listen to people, even if you are very different from them or communicate in a different way, not having that judgment really just kind of clears the air for everyone to feel comfortable, even if you talk to each other so differently. Do we have any other questions or even just comments or really anything at all?
I think when you said, we're supposed to listen to understand first instead of listen to respond, I think part of that is understanding their style and how they talk. I think that's part of what it is you're understanding when you're listening.
Oh, yeah.
I would say, and thank you guys so much for putting this on today. I would say that in sharing stories and sharing our story, that's one of the biggest ways that we create culture inside of a group that we're leading. And so I think that really through the stories we tell, if we're intentional with that, we can create the culture that we want in the groups that we lead. So if we want to have a group that is kind and understanding, really works well together, then that kind of shapes the stories that we end up sharing as well. And so I think that's a huge part of the power of narrative.
Yes. We actually will have a whole seminar on how to create culture through stories as a leader. So Josh just gave you a little sneak peek into another seminar. Well, if no one else has anything, I honestly just want to say thank you all so much for being here. Without you all, the Leadership Development Series wouldn't happen. And I truly just have so much fun speaking to you all and hearing all of your different insights and all of your different stories, to be cliche. It's really just a lot of fun, and I love this part of my job. Anytime you want to learn about leadership, please do not hesitate to stop by Office 250. We'll be here for you. And I just really appreciate you all being here. Have a wonderful day.